StarStop.com. You don't have to be a freeloader your whole life. The good news is that you can support this show and the fight by buying some really cool clothes. StarStop.com.
First blood to them. Hold as many objectives as you can. Objective Delta has been lost.
Elliot Page. L-E-E-S. Has abdominal implants. So Gerald A. Jeremy survived. I'm just going to say BS. Just like
We have taken objective Emil, soldiers.
well, that was China in WWF, and that was a tragedy. Let's not joke about that. Better than the good. Get the Did you buy those jeans pre-ripped? I did buy pre-ripped because they were on clearance for $9. Nice. Now my question is, why jeans
Objective Nova has been lost. Well done. We have taken objective Anton. We have now taken objective Emil.
Main streets, and so that Your guess is as good as mine. Is that the war room he's in? I have no idea. Gosh, can you imagine him in a war room? Someone needs to help this man. It is very clear that this man is not all with it.
Yeah, he's a disaster at FEMA, being a disaster. Yeah, definitely, they're not helping. No,
Hey, you guys clean this up? What? Well, my depends. You know, what? A thing. If he was a greeter at Walmart, there would have to be a meeting to get rid of. Right. By the way, that's a minimum age requirement of 93. Is it Walmart? Let's get to way more. And you can have bonus if you have an oxygen tank. So you're still coming to put a sticker on that oxygen tank because I saw that in the sporting goods section. You're a real firecracker. You're gonna die very shortly.
soon.
Somebody asked him if we had grills, and he said, "You ain't black."
You know what? That's a perfect example of minimum wage. Listen, these people are just there because they want to get out of the house and do something.
Right.
And also, when we work with special needs people, they'll often be hired at places like Walmart, McDonald's to do jobs that they might not be super proficient at doing, but to give them a sense of purpose. That being said, Walmart greeters, I think that if we get into another economic crisis, those should be the first to go.
I feel bad because I walk in and I see them, and I'm like, "You're just something in the way of like." I just feel like I want to hug you.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, "You shouldn't be here."
Right, but then you're like, yeah, but I could have something I'm totally immune to, and I hug you.
Capture and hold as many objectives as you can.
they're just like, oh yeah, okay, we got Garrett, we got. It's the one where they beat Elliot Page, which is like, holy whoa, James, you look front.
What's happening?
He's really good at trouble, though.
He really is. That's just all right, today is the anniversary to George Floyd. In honor that the State Department authorized embassies to fly Black Lives Matter flags.
Oh, really?
emanating from
government power, and they believe concentrations of power inevitably would lead to people's liberties being curtailed. We now have a situation in which some of these massive companies in Silicon Valley are exerting a power over our population that really has no precedent in American history. I'd say two of the major issues when people look back on this period will be the efficacy of coronavirus lockdowns and the origin of the coronavirus in Wuhan, China. Now we have information that this very well may have emanated from the Wuhan lab, that it was a leak from the lab. But you remember when people last year were raising that as something that needed to be investigated, they were deplatformed, and now even
good to hear someone addressing it.
That this may be something that very well is the case. Are they going to now censor Fauci and pull him down? When you deplatform the President of the United States, but you let Ayatollah Khomeini talk about killing Jews, that is wrong.
First off, I've been saying Ayatollah Khomeini wrong this whole time. That was Ayatollah Khomeini. No? Anyone know that too? I thought it was too. I say it American style. I don't know what those Floridians say. But you know what? I love that he articulated something. He pointed to specifics. And I hate to say this, but when you look at even some people who've been on these shows, sometimes you look at Dan Crenshaw, Ted Cruz, love him, Rand Paul, some of these people. You look at Marco Rubio, they complain about big tech, but they don't laser in on specific examples. Look, this is something that could have saved lives. Not to mention, could have helped the people of China. We talked about it initially, where we talked about how it could have leaked in a lab, and this was something that, by the way, wasn't controversial when this started.
No.
And then they decided no one can speak out about it because Donald Trump was. And they wanted to try and say, okay, he's a racist, he's lying, and so then the new policies were, well, that's good. If it goes against the CDC or World Health Organization, you can't talk about it. So we weren't allowed to talk about it on YouTube. We had to do it exclusively on Mug Club. And now we know that not only is it possible, it is likely. That's really scary. People say you misuse the term Orwellian.
Yeah.
People were removed for stating and following the science what we now know is at the very least a possibility, likely the truth.
Right, and if you were watching CNN New Day this morning, they were trying to whitewash the history and and I swear to you, this was one of the most infuriating pieces I've seen, which is saying something. They said Donald Trump wasn't concerned about the truth. He was just trying to set up blame for China. He was trying to figure out a way to blame China. And then Pompeo comes on and says, I've seen evidence that suggests it possibly leaked from the lab there, and he didn't put the evidence out. And Donald Trump was really just making racist comments that led to an increase in anti-Asian crimes. And I was like, guys, how do you see a story about Donald Trump saying this possibly leaked from a lab? It turns out to be true, and then you go back and go, well, how can we cover this?
Right.
How can we go back and recover what we said and make it seem like Donald Trump is, oh, he's racist, that's right, he's racist.
And by the way, don't you love people here? They all want to act like they're Aaron Brockovich and the Brian Stelter of the world, and these journalists and these martyrs. Whistleblowers were disappearing in China. Not a peep. You talk about freedom. This is how we know that you don't care about the First Amendment. You know, Brian Stelter was just on. He was saying it's not about freedom of speech. It's about freedom of reach. Like he's a bald, skillless Johnny Cochran. It's not freedom of speech. It's freedom of reach. And oh my God, I'm a peach. Oh, someone scratch my each. I just can't stand this guy. It's not about freedom of
seltzer reach around.
Stelter, for crying out loud.
There were videos.
No,
I said it wrong like he is about everything.
Right. There are videos of people in China being dragged out of their apartments. The first doctor to kind of blow the whistle on this was put in a COVID ward, essentially, right?
Yeah, disappeared.
Disappeared, yeah. We had video of him, I think, and pictures, and then he was dead. It was just like, guys, how in the world can you hate Donald Trump more than the communist regime that oppresses the Chinese people? How is that possible?
There's also videos of people being soldered into their apartments.
Right.
That was like the second plan. They're like, well, instead of taking them out, let's just lock them in forever.
Right. Yeah, that's what they do. Now, again, I'm anti-Chinese Communist Party.
Right.
Because I'm pro-Chinese people. I believe that they deserve the same liberties that everyone, that you journalists so enjoy, and you abuse. But
you know, I've talked to you off the show. I'm going to be honest. You are also anti-Asian hate crime. I don't know if people know this.
Look, I'm not afraid to take the unpopular position.
Look, I'm telling you. He's told me this.
It's a risk, and I take it. We actually have a disproportionate number of Asians working for us. We need to fix that.
Yeah.
All right.
More.
We're going to break a pool queue, and we're going to have
Although I'm
Asian
starting to
tryouts.
think that the guy and the girl that work for you might be the same person.
Yeah, it's pretty tough to tell the difference.
Mm-hmm.
It is pretty tough.
He checks a lot of boxes.
I don't know if it's Ellen or Elliot.
Two separate people, one being. So, subscribe to the podcast, by the way, if you are watching this on Rumble, or if you're listening, of course, to the audio version, just forward it to people. Apple, I say iTunes, but Apple, Android, Spotify. Here's another thing, too, while we're talking about not just freedom of speech. And we'll figure out when we'll be back on YouTube and what that looks like. It won't be before next week because we're still waiting on some answers and to follow us for more on the lawsuit. But the issue with YouTube, right, is we don't know the rules, and it's designed to create a culture of self-censorship. And it's really scary when that seems, for some reason, appealing to people who are supposed to be sort of that frontier of free speech comedians.
Yeah.
And so you've got Seth Rogen now. If you just, here's actually something I think he gave to The Independent, him talking about how he doesn't understand how any comedians have a problem with cancel culture. Here you go.
But I was never a comedian, I don't think, that made jokes that were clearly like designed to target groups that were subjugated in some way. Again, have we done that without realizing it? Definitely. And of those things, again, those things are in our movies and they're out there. And they're things that I'm more than happy to say that, you know, they have not aged well, you know. But in my Twitter, I've never made a joke that's like outwardly horrific in some way. And if you have, I would question why you did that, you know. And you know, it's saying terrible things.
You're 40. So what do you mean not aged well? They just made the movie 5 years ago.
I don't think that's cancel culture. That's you saying something terrible if that's what you've done.
Okay, first off, this is, and I understand the irony. Wow. We need to stop importing Canadians. Look, they come from a land.
That's the real problem. Yeah.
Where they do not understand freedom of speech. It doesn't exist.
No.
In Canada, they go, oh, we're going to shut down churches. People go, oh, okay. In Canada, they say, we're going to fine comedians like our friend Mike Ward for making jokes that people find offensive. That aren't even political. Okay.
Yeah.
In Canada, they're okay with it, and they want that here. They want the laws of the land. They had to leave to become successful in order to be able to speak freely, like all comedians.
Yeah.
They want to change. It's like Californians going to Texas. And by the way, he said, I've never said anything horrific. No, that's subjective to some people.
Of course.
He said, just remember, if you're Jewish, no, this is on his Twitter. Just remember, if you're Jewish, white supremacists hate you too. Saved from what? How? What happens to the Jews in relation to the Christians and your beliefs? Hey, Jack Dorsey, maybe do something about all the white supremacists and verified and the amplified accounts. Ted Cruz, you're a piece of shit. Look, some people. I know what you're thinking. Is that Seth Rogen or is it Rachel Maddow? I know. It's one of those things.
It's a toss-up.
Also, you started almost an international war because of a film that you made about Kim Jong-un. Now, here's something you need to understand. When I was about to say Ted Cruz.
Which started with a giant gay joke with Eminem, by the way. Just want to point that out.
Exactly.
The North Korea thing?
Yep.
Yeah.
The whole thing was Eminem coming out of the closet, making fun of gay people was the opening of that movie for somebody who's never made fun of a subjugated group.
Right, yeah, that's actually a really good point. He's made fun of course, the Christians, the Jews, and, of course, the gays. By the way, rape culture, have you guys seen his films?
Oh, well, let's see, there's the 40-Year-Old Virgin. There's Knocked Up.
Yeah, right. Where he knowingly seeks out women who are inebriated.
Yes, there's Zack and Mira make a porno where Jason Mewes has actual sex with a porn star in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of movies.
Yeah,
Observe and Report.
Observe and Report. Right. And the whole point here is, look, I don't think do I think it's rape? No. I think it's degenerate culture. But then you want to act like it's Southern Baptists who are perpetuating rape culture. No, the only place you have a pedophile rape problem is your community. For crying out loud, Kevin Spacey is coming back doing a film about being a child rape detective. That's his comeback. It only exists where you live, and these people in a bubble. Yeah, it's rape culture, right? It's because of Ted Haggard and Joel Osteen. No, it's because of you, and I think that you should have every right to make those films. But going back to North Korea, and that's a good point. I forgot about Eminem coming. It was funny, by the way.
It was funny. I'm not saying it wasn't.
No,
it was funny.
It was absolutely funny. But rules for me, not for thee. Here's something that he doesn't understand. When someone is allowed to simply determine what's offensive and horrible, when you're allowing it to be subjective as opposed to the First Amendment, you end up with, well, what happened with, what was it called, The Interview?
Yeah.
It's not that you make fun of Kim Jong-un. A lot of people don't know this. People love him in North Korea because they've been brainwashed.
Yeah.
Because it's propaganda. An entire nation of people, I can't think of people more subjugated than the North Korean people, but they have Stockholm Syndrome, felt like it was an affront to their way of life. Why would you do that, Seth Rogen? Why would you attack the North Korean people by crapping on their dictator? Now, my point is, I don't think you were. I think you have the right to, but you don't believe that other people do. That's the issue here. It's amazing to me that these people don't see the slippery slope. Look, comedians already have a built-in regulator. It's the audience. The audience will let you know if something is too far, if something is racist.
Yes, that's 100% accurate.
Well, they always say something like, well, if you say something completely horrible, of course you should be removed. Okay, well, define horrible. Help me understand where the line is, because the whole problem that we have is that this line keeps moving, and our argument is that the line shouldn't exist in the first place.
Well, keep in mind,
the audience be the line.
But 2 months ago, horrible was saying that it may have originated in a lab.
Right.
And Seth Rogen supports that because he thinks Jack Dorsey should have the right to manipulate what happens in the town square.
Yeah.
Well, now we know it's probably true.
Yeah, well, horrible was
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson not being able to say he or she when he preferred it and couldn't tell the difference between somebody, and it almost gets drummed out of academia.
Well, and let's see how that works. Oh, yeah, it made him insanely famous.
Exactly, yeah.
Also, in Blaze Chat, we have Charles Brady. What about Pineapple Express when he's actually dating a high schooler?
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
true.
yeah, that's right.
Well, they don't see anything wrong with that.
No.
They just think,
Well, no.
they have to talk with their PR person for optics, like David Cross, right? And he was, what's her name, Amber? What's his name of his girlfriend? She was 17, and he said that he banged her in the back of a dumpster.
Yeah,
Oh, geez.
not Amber Heard. That was
I know.
Johnny Depp.
No, she was the one who was beating up Johnny Depp like he was a Walmart driver.
Yes, well, yeah, and then saying that he was snorting coke through a tampon applicator.
Yeah.
Ah.
That's what she said, yeah.
No, I'm serious. She took photos of it, and people were like, "Well, this is not real anymore."
Yeah, and then they realized that she was beating him up. Anyway,
Yeah.
the point, good point. Dating a high schooler. And by the way, that's something that we would just be like, even on this show, which has been accused of being way too edgy, we'd be like, no, let's not do a joke about dating a high schooler.
Right.
Let's just making fun of someone like a Seth Rogen for dating a high schooler.
Or like in Old School where he finds out she was like, oh, crap.
Yeah.
Well, and Vince Vaughn has a moment of clarity in that movie, though,
Yeah.
where Seth Rogen, he doesn't.
No.
Not that I don't find them funny, but you're right about cancel culture. Like, you've really just said something there where it's taking something that's already successful that people enjoy and getting rid of it. That's the problem with cancel culture. It's not saying that we shouldn't make this. It's taking away something we've already decided should exist.
Well, it's both, and the issue is cancel culture. People say, there's no cancel culture, there's accountability culture.
Yes.
Look, there is accountability. Anyone, you've been in an audience, boom, I'm held accountable to what I said because it's not funny. People aren't laughing.
Yeah.
No, cancel culture is people who are not even part of the audience determining that they know better than the audience and putting enough pressure on executives to remove your livelihood. It's not the majority of people. Look, in any instance of cancel culture, when you're talking about this, these people wouldn't lose their livelihoods because the remaining half of the country would support them. If they lose advertisers, if they lose the ability to make a living, because people like Seth Rogen in 3 major cities across the country determine what is and what is not permissible. No one has a problem with an audience saying, we don't like it. You know what that's called? Once upon a time, a box office bomb. It's called your tour's no longer successful.
Yeah.
That's not what cancel culture is. It's just like privileged white bitches deciding that they're going to speak for black people. It's these people saying, no, this is too offensive. We can't allow anyone else to see it, even though they've already decided to vote with their dollar. Okay.
And they know they're not great people. They made a movie about the apocalypse happening, and they're all left on Earth during the rapture.
Oh, by the way, doesn't someone get raped by Satan?
Jonah Hill gets raped by a demon in that movie.
Yes.
And then Danny McBride forces sex on
Channing Tatum.
Channing Tatum, who he keeps on a dog leash.
Well, you know what? This is the whole rule, right, with them. Is you go,
That's hilarious, by the way.
It's funny.
It's really funny.
But you go, this is pretty dirty. This is pretty depraved.
Yes.
Why all of a sudden is he deciding that how is Seth Rogen determining that Ted Cruz is offensive?
Right.
It's because they go, no. Raping a demon raping a guy, mocking Christianity, mocking men, it's totally fine because it's white men. So that's okay. We can make it as vulgar, we can make it as NC-17 as we want,
Yeah.
and we can attack people with no repercussion. And by the way, you should be able to, as long as the audience can vote with their dollar, because it's a white male.
Yep.
This is the issue here. It's not the audience determining it. It's you and Jonah Hill. Okay, but they're a barrel full of laughs these days. So, Fulton, it's gotten so bad.
It's just upsetting. Sorry, I know you want to move on. I'm just
No, it's okay.
upset.
We got what are they talking here in CNN?
It's just comedy, and it's being destroyed by... Well, actually, I think the most offensive thing he's ever done is that road trip movie with, I think it's Barbara
With
Streisand.
Babs.
Is that who it's with?
Yeah.
That's when he decided, you
Babs.
know what, funny's not for me.
Yeah. When you see him promoting the film, like they don't believe it, he's like, yeah, it was such an honor, to work with Barbara Streisand, Babs numbers. Really, I think audiences are gonna really get a kick out of it. You can just see him dying inside.
It's like, I have seen it.
That's why I love Johnny Depp on Letterman. He's like, what do you think of it? He's like, I've never watched any of my movies. He's just honest. He's like, I don't know, you might like it.
All right, Fulton County. So this is something, we're not allowed to talk about this on YouTube. Hey, thanks, Rumble. By the way, we're still here on Rumble right now.
Rumble.
And I don't know why maybe we would be allowed to talk about it because it's news and it's a judge order. But last week, a judge in Fulton County, Georgia, by the way, he ordered an audit and ruled that absentee ballots can be unsealed. Now, we don't know exactly but the case, if you looked at what was presented to the judge, that was convincing enough for him to unseal this, says that there's a claim there was a very large discrepancy when they kind of did their sample audit. Don't know if they were correct or not, but the judge said, okay, it warrants looking into this further. You need to unseal it, which, of course, Democrats say is a direct attack on our democracy. I know transparency is not good for Burgundy democracy.
Right. Wouldn't confirming actually be great?
No, we want to solder the poll workers behind closed. We want to solder them into their apartment. Yeah. So, okay.
Sure.
Here's what's funny. Liberals are so upset about this audit, not only in Arizona now, but now in Fulton. But listen to their justification. We're going to find common ground. We're going to find consistency. We're going to go based now on the left's standard. Listen to it.
Well, first and foremost, the entity that I wouldn't even call it conducting an audit, conducting a sham audit, conducting shenanigans out in Arizona, is a partisan group that doesn't have any experience in elections. And when we do election audits, there is a whole host of best practices, including chain of custody, among other things. And once that chain of custody is broken and other security procedures are not followed, then it puts the voting equipment at risk. And this could cost Arizona millions of dollars to replace this election equipment.
Oh, so hold on a second. Did you guys just hear? Chain of custody. Chain of custody.
Oh.
Is what matters now.
It does?
Let's
Is that
go
America Fiera?
Yeah. And photo negative Skrillex. So, is Skrillex still a thing, by the way? It seems like he really came. It's a he, right? Came and went really quickly.
Well.
Chain of custody.
It's gross.
Is the concern now. This is what we're talking about. Let's use this standard for the left. We can't trust these odds because of chain of custody. Okay. We're not alleging fraud right now. I'm not saying that we can say that the election. Of course, I'm not saying that. We would never suggest that.
No, never.
You know what? Let me say this before. I want to go to the chain of custody argument. Let's take an actual risky position. I don't think that you need to, by the way, take just an absolutist stance on this. I do think that you need cutoffs. So I said we don't want to cannibalize our own with conservatives. Like I said, sometimes people go after Tim Pool because he's not conservative enough. I think he's doing pretty damn well, right? Yeah. I think he's moving along down the trail if you compare him to 2 years ago. With the election, look, I do have my cutoffs, and I think that this should be reasonable to you too. My cutoff is if someone is making a claim that is entirely unverifiable, for example, something with Dominion voting machines that we don't have access to, and they tell you that you're a cuck or that you're part of the establishment, if you don't just start spreading their story and agree with them wholesale, I have no interest in speaking with those people. Now, on the flip, here's the other border. If you believe, or if you want to perpetuate the idea that there were no anomalies in this election that were never seen before in any other American election, and that there is no reason for anyone to be suspicious or to have questions, you also shouldn't be included. This gives us a huge swath of remaining Americans.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, it was that this was the safest and most secure election. I'm not saying it wasn't. I'm not saying, how do you know? I didn't know we had a measurement for this going back.
How could it be the safest election period in the most violent crime wave our country has seen since before Dirty Harry? It's not possible.
Are you saying the 88 election wasn't safe and secure, and compared to that one, this is? Like, I don't know where to go with this.
Yeah.
Is there a ranking?
So the last thing I would want to see is somebody wasting taxpayers' money.
Right. Yeah. Well, their problem here is it's private groups. It's not taxpayer money, so we can't trust it.
So it's millions. Oh, I see.
By the way, more money, please. More money, please. How much? $4 trillion? I don't know. Round up. So here in Georgia, this is. Let's just go through some examples of broken chain of custody, since that's their concern with it. Okay, in Georgia alone, observers left early, and the Secretary of State's office announced an investigation into why they left before the scanning ended. Again, we're just talking about broken chain of custody. There are not to mention the sworn affidavits, dozens of sworn affidavits, right? There's videographic evidence of a broken chain of custody. It hasn't even been denied by the left or been denied by the judges. It was just a moot point. But believe your lying eyes. Here you go in Georgia. Remember this?
Walk in the morning, and we're going to roll this back and show it to you. There you go. So now they're going to start pulling these ballots out from under this table. This table, the black one, was placed there by the blonde braids. At about 8:22.
Now, their claim here is they say, well, this isn't true. Those weren't suitcases. They were boxes. It doesn't matter. The chain of custody is broken because there are no other poll watchers. That is undeniable.
Yeah, I remember the lame excuse that they had for
at 8:22 in the morning.
for this.
Yeah, exactly. No, look, let's say that their excuses are valid. It's like, oh, those were actually just ballots that were there before. They didn't bring them. Fine. There's a broken chain of custody because the other people did leave. And by the way, they were told to leave. And then the media was told that they left because of a broken water pipe. So there are so many lies there and so many mistruths. But let's wipe all of that off. The broken chain of custody. No way to refute it. Okay, let's go to Michigan. Poll workers were, of course, allegedly denied, and when I say allegedly, I mean on camera. But then people say, well, there's no evidence of it because it was thrown out of court because this is the election's over. Yeah. But on camera, you had poll walkers who were denied entry, and the windows of the TCF Center there in Detroit were boarded up. That amounts to a broken chain of custody. You're lying eyes.
So essentially what's happening is our people are coming out from this morning, our poll challengers are coming out from this morning, and they're not allowing us to replace them. We've got more than enough people upstairs waiting to come down to swap out and to do shifts because it's obviously a long process. And as they're coming out, we try to go in and they say, sorry, we're at capacity, which if anybody knows, you click on 5 out, 5 can go in.
Again, you can try to list some justification, but if you say that this is typical practice, you are of no interest to me in a reasonable conversation.
Also, as a Detroiter, liberal media was saying, you're not going to believe this, but Trump just took Wayne County. It was this being announced across. That's a fact. Right. People can go look and check.
And they retroactively say, well, what? Everyone knew the mail-in ballots were going to switch it for Biden. No, they didn't. We were covering it live, and they were going, well, it looks like Donald Trump.
They announced it as a sure thing.
Yes, it's March. They didn't believe the mail-in ballots were.
They didn't believe that all of a sudden some guy was going to pull up in a truck at 3 a.m. and was like, oh, I found some.
What? That's a real wet wagon. I can't do my work.
Donald Trump was outperforming himself over the 2016 election. If you remember that, that's exactly what we were talking about. So I think this caught everybody, including Cenk Uygur, by surprise.
No.
Sorry.
He was only outperforming his previous performance in an election, and he was only outperforming Biden in every single urban center outside of 6.
What was this person?
In other words, he was outperforming Biden in Cincinnati. He was outperforming Biden in Miami. He was outperforming Biden in take your pick in Portland. I'm not saying that he was winning them, but he was out.
No.
He was doing better. The only area where there was a disproportionate were Detroit, Atlanta, Phoenix. That's a fact. And he won 19, I think, of 21 bellwether counties. So again, if you say there are no anomalies, Brett, that's dishonest. If you say you know what happened, that's dishonest. But let's not act like what you just saw there was normal. And again, using the left standard, if they're saying we have to throw out this audit because they're not following chain of custody, good. You have to throw out those votes and those precincts. Gone.
Yeah.
Who's Cenk Uygur? Is that a real name?
It is. Nobody, and that's the only answer you need.
But here's the thing, too.
I'm going to talk about this after the show because I need to know.
We are not saying.
Well, that's not why I was saying no.
No.
That has no.
I thought it was for a second, but then.
I mean, I had a friend who had that.
No, he was the guy at the Young Turks, but we officially buried him because we.
Yeah.
It's like beating a dead. Horse. It's like beating a dead Clydesdale.
Well, and this, all we're doing is highlighting the reason people
had
questions.
Candidate, I'm sorry.
Yeah, right? The reason people...
He actually was a candidate.
Damn you all.
And he lost
sorry.
He lost because of all his sexist rape articles.
Yeah.
For him.
For Congress or whatever. It's going to be a great idea.
Old Cenk.
Well, and look, if you look at all of these things and say there's nothing to see here, there may be... Listen, you may have great explanations for why these things happen. I would love to hear them. I haven't heard them yet. But if you have great explanations, that's fine. That's fine. But people had questions because these things hadn't happened before.
Right.
These things sparked people going, whoa, wait, what's going on here?
At the very least, broken chain of custody.
Right.
Let's go to Pennsylvania. Another, some would say, pivotal example. Poll workers were denied entry. Here's one example of it happening. When the poll worker, by the way, had a court order to be there, and the person said that this poll worker was at the wrong precinct, and again, paperwork was exchanged. It was at the right place, and had permission to be there, was denied entry. But again, believe your line eyes.
I have a citywide Rogers.
Citywide.
It's not for this location. It's not. It's not. This is the city of Philadelphia. This is the city of Philadelphia. You wanted to talk. You wanted to talk outside. Let's talk.
Check out the sign. No welding mask. No entry. feet.
I remember that.
Yeah, and by the way, observers were kept more than 6 feet away. Again, broken chain of custody. Just looking at the spirit of the law and the letter of the law. All of a sudden, it's relevant.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, well, okay, chain of custody matters. All of a sudden, maybe we need to get to the bottom of what happened with the Wuhan virus in this biochemical lab. All of a sudden, it matters after people have been deplatformed for asking these questions. Not to mention, YouTube just changed their terms of service. Like I just read this morning, where they will aggressively remove, they're going to use facial recognition software where they remove anyone who's appearing in a video without their permission. Investigative journalism cannot exist. It cannot exist in that environment.
Wow.
And they still reserve the right now, YouTube, to run ads on anyone not in the partner program. So in other words, you're not advertiser friendly. We're not going to allow you to make a living, but we're going to make a whole lot of money. This is, again, this favors unbelievable legacy media content creators because they have everyone come in and they have everyone sign some kind of an actual permission slip when you're in the studio, but that doesn't apply because we have laws that already exist, single party consent states, especially if somebody is in public. YouTube won't follow the law. A few $1 million doesn't mean all that much to NBC Fox, doesn't mean all that much to Universal Disney, ABC, but guess what? It means a lot to independent content creators.
Yeah.
So when they say you're not going to be allowed to be a partner, okay, NBC's all right, a few million, that's their bottom line. That allows shows like this to beat the ass of people like Brian Stelter or Brian Williams. All of these rules are being created to favor legacy, well, not even content creators, legacy media and silence independent voices. And they say that they're doing it for you. And by the way, flagrantly disregarding the law. There's a reason we have single-party consent laws, and that's so you can root out corruption and investigative journalism can exist. In other words, let's say Nixon were a Democrat, Watergate, YouTube would remove it.
That's true, yeah.
I just feel safe knowing that I'm getting the information someone else would like me to have.
You don't have to think about it.
No, I
You have to think about it, bro.
Come on, man.
The CDC just tells you don't even got to think about it, moron.
Put on your sideways hat, hon. We have to do a shit show.
And every segment like this?
Yeah, should we do this?
All right, by the way.
Anything say we're 52? Like
Seth Rogen.
Boy, he's worthless.
Hey, by the way, smash that Rumble button if you're watching this on Rumble right now. And we have Dr. Peter McCullough coming out, which we're looking forward to. Extended interview on Monday. Look at that. Look at an angry hand, but Hulk.
It's good.
Also, by the way, while we're talking about this same standard being applied, do you all know the Stacey Abrams story?
Yeah, it's like...
Does anyone know this? In 2018, what happened with Stacey Abrams? She still refuses to concede that election to Kemp? Do people not know this?
But she has evidence, right?
I feel like I'm... Yeah, well, look, let me read a quote.
It's hard to tell when they you have CNN treating her like she won.
I know.
Exactly.
She lost in 2018. Then she claimed that there was voter suppression, all this stuff. She never conceded Kemp. Here's an actual quote from the New York Times. She wrote 3. She was 1, 2, 3. I have no empirical evidence that I would have achieved a higher number of votes. However, I have sufficient and I think legally sufficient doubt about the process to say it was not a fair election. So, this is the first quote. I have no empirical evidence.
Yeah.
Then another quote. I make my claims based on empirical evidence.
Oh, gee.
On a demonstrated pattern of behavior that began with the fact that the person was there. And look, she still, to this day, doesn't acknowledge that he's legit. She's like, he won the election, but I'm not going to say governor.
I don't know. By the way, how is it possible for her and Beto O'Rourke to get their asses handed to them and get presidential campaigns right after that? Like, oh, you lost the local election, you'll probably do fantastic in a national election.
Well, it's the Democrats, or the party of the people, just like they soldered Bernie into his own junior suites in Montpelier twice. It took about a week for him to figure out. He thought that he was the one who had it wrong. He's like, push. Oh, it must be a pull. No, it must be a push.
I don't know.
Oh, it must be a pull. Must be. And then there's one later. I think I'm getting screwed.
Yeah. The Democrats were the demon to his Jonah Hill.
Yeah, exactly. All right. By the way, let's move on to Democrats when we're done about this, about crime. This is something that we've talked about here in the show. Democrats right now want to make criminals out of law-abiding citizens, and they want to make current criminals into voters. That's what's happening. Now, I'm not attributing motive. I'm looking at actual policy and the data as a result of said policy. Let me repeat this. They want to turn law-abiding American citizens into criminals of the state and current violent criminals into a new voter base. So, today is 1 year, the anniversary of George Floyd's death, which we all agree was a tragedy. Now, we don't all agree on the circumstances and Chauvin and the trial, but we all agree that that was a scenario where obviously it would be better if George Floyd hadn't died. That's sad.
100%.
Okay? I don't think that with Mekhi Bryant and that officer. I don't see it as a tragedy because at that point someone's life was in danger. I see that as a necessity. That's the rule of life when you decide to take someone else's life, whether a gun or a knife. George Floyd, I think we all agree, regardless of where you line up in the trial, it's a tragedy.
And the girl who got to live agrees with you.
Yes, the girl who got to live, by the way,
Strongly.
she can't speak out because she's afraid.
Yeah.
Because she's been accused, I guess, an Aunt Tom, I guess, at this point. If she speaks out and supports the police who she called to save her life, she will be ostracized. Wow. All right. So 1 year since George Floyd's death. It's important to remember how Democrats, before we get into this, have been encouraging Americans to, since his death, look, if you're going to tell them how you honor someone, right? How do you honor somebody? You know, if it's like Charles Grodin just died, they started posting, clips of. He's never been anything short of the sharpest interview you'll ever have. And I've talked about that on the show. A lot of people forgot about it. So you honor him by showing his best work. You honor him by talking about what he contributed. He was a family. All of this. How do they honor George Floyd 1 year since his death? Democrats have honored him by encouraging mass violence repeatedly.
We've got to not only stay in the street, but we've got to fight for justice. But I am very hopeful, and I hope that we're going to get a verdict that will say guilty, guilty, guilty.
They're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. And they're not, this is a movement, I'm telling you. They're not going to stop. And everyone beware. Because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day.
Now, too many see the protests as the problem. No, the problem is what forced your fellow citizens to take to the streets. Persistent and poisonous inequities and injustice.
Also,
please,
covering up
show me where it says that
sexual
protesters
harassment.
are supposed to be polite.
Speaking of forced, how is he? Oh yeah, I saw this in New York, by the way.
Thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice.
That last one isn't necessarily encouraging violence. It's just so stupid it had to be included. The only dumber thing that Nancy Pelosi has ever done is when she went out with the cool running scarf to try and act like she...
and then couldn't get up from kneeling after they were kneeling.
Or when people were starting to starve and she decided to show you her ice cream.
Yeah, in her $26,000 freezer.
Yeah.
I don't know, they're kind of at par with each other.
Not to mention your $4,000 vomit bin after the ice cream. You're not sitting there eating Chunky Monkey all night and then looking like Tom Hanks in the last act of Philadelphia. So, look, we do want to thank George Floyd for inspiring a mass movement, and in honor of this historic day, we actually have a montage. We're going to be commemorating George Floyd, the 2020 Summer of Love, with our very own Even Brendan singing Amazing Grace. Even Brendan, can you give me a D? Got it?
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see.
That's very nice. Is that all you're doing? Can you do some more? No. Okay. Thank you, Even Brendan.
Nice job.
George Floyd would have wanted it that way.
He would have. Those Nikes helped.
Tim looks good on a resume.
Yes.
We missed some of the B-roll there, Tim the Toolman. I think we only had a couple. It was tough to see, but
That's tough to see, but it was riots.
it was riots. I think we all get the general sentiment.
I think it was nice.
By the way, America reckons with racism right now on CNN. 1 year after George Floyd's murder. Oh well, how are we reckoning? Let's see. Bring up the audio there, Bryce. I know we don't have Quarter Black Garrett in, but bring up the audio for people to. Yeah, are we bringing it in? Are we bringing it in? Can we bring in the audio?
We're working on it.
Thompson's friend, Philando Castile, was shot and killed by a Minnesota police officer in 2016. That officer was never convicted on any charges.
So hold on a second. I thought they were talking about America reckoning within the year since George Floyd's death, and they brought up a story from 2016.
Yes, 4 years before he died.
Yeah, 4 years before he died.
So what they're saying is this was racism before, and if they had fixed it, they could have prevented George Floyd's
Okay.
death. But, by the way, they've never made any case that it was kind of motivated by racism.
Right, yeah, exactly. And by the way, the only thing that's happened since then is skyrocketing crime and lowering arrests.
Looting. I love it. Chris Cuomo was talking on there. It's like, you should focus on why they're in the streets. And right below him, it says New York braces for another night of looting and rioting.
Well, it's fine because they have the threat of immediately being let out of jail without bail.
I know.
Right, yeah.
Like, well, I'm pissed off at the looting and rioting. It's in your thing, right? Just look down.
Well, this again.
Actually,
shows...
this watch I'm not too pissed off about, but yeah, it's upsetting.
Right. This is something that we need to pay attention to. Again, their goal, I want to repeat this, if I'm sounding repetitive, this is important for you to know, they want to make criminals of law-abiding Americans, and they want to turn actual criminals into a voting base. So, during COVID, Democrats, they released violent offenders across the country, consistently. It doesn't mean that they need to be in cahoots. They just all think, well, yeah, okay, let's release violent offenders, because some people don't think that Democrats are what it is, but it be. Nationally, 208,000 criminals released in the first 4 months of COVID. Jeez. Not the least among them, Tekashi 6ix9ine.
It's good to have him out.
Good to have a snitch. Good to see that hip-hop's #1 star is a snitch who was released from prison for COVID because of his asthma, like Piggy from Lord of the Flies. Someone take his contact lens to use it as a magnifying glass. All right.
Bitch.
What a
Sorry,
bitch.
he just should. Yeah.
In California, Governor Gavin Newsom,
Where's a shower
63,000.
shank when you deserve it?
It's just a toothbrush with
I'm sorry.
Just a toothbrush with an angled razor blade.
You have tools.
Just tell him it's an inhaler. He's so dumb he won't know the difference. 63,000 violent criminals in California. New York City, 2,500 criminals were released as of June 2020. 250 of them were rearrested 450 times.
Yeah, that's always interesting. It's like, yeah, we let out this rapist. What happened? He still did it.
I don't know.
Crazy.
I don't know what happened. It's almost as though the strongest indicator of future behavior is past behavior.
I don't know what it is. I may be taking 19 years off of a sentence because they might get a cold is silly.
Yeah, it's 250 people who were so dumb that they committed another crime right as they got out and then committed another one.
I mean, I had a college professor bitch about the American prison industrial complex, but this doesn't make any sense.
To do with it.
Oh, if we've lost all the businesses in New York where people can get legitimate jobs, let's let out killers.
Yes. But by the way, hey, the good news is crime is up and arrests are down. So we have that. That's a good thing. So arrests are down 39% from 2019 to 2020, but homicides were up 29%. Sorry, 39% down arrests, 29% increase in homicides. Come on, hey guys, balance, yin yang. Let's try and even that out. Let's make it a 39 on both sides of the ledger.
Just because you're not catching the criminal. I mean, that's good.
What is Bain,
So
the
funny.
mayor of New York now?
No, the mayor is much worse.
Yeah, shooting victims, by the way, up 84% in New York City. So decrease in arrests, decrease in police funding across the country. We see an increase in violent crime. Now, Illinois. Let's go to another example here. 4,000 criminals released, including 64 actual murderers.
Wow.
Actual murderers.
Say that again.
Just to be clear. And the U.S. saw more murders in 2020 since 1998.
Geez, that's an upward trend.
The largest single-year increase in history. And some people are going to say, this is something too, you hear a lot say, oh, well, the economy is bad because of COVID. Actually, data shows us that COVID, the lockdowns, should decrease crime. And you've seen that in areas across Europe, if you look at the studies. It actually decreases crime because there are fewer human interactions. So it's important to note, okay, that these increases in crime have happened despite the protective effect of lockdowns.
Wow.
Weird. I also find that if you lock up killers, they tend to not kill as many innocent civilians.
No, we let out the killers and we lock up people who, own the local Hello Deli.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's what we do. We arrest people for not double masking, and we release people for triple homicide.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah, this is what's happening.
As long as the mask is filled with chloroform before you take someone out.
That sentence totally makes sense.
And this is something, too, where we say people... This is something, too, where I've seen people... Sorry, I'm coughing up a lung.
Get it?
Not COVID, that's the only thing I know. Where people get mad and they say, look, you look at Florida now, they're trying to create laws to allow you to run over protesters. Look, they're trying to... No, hold on a second. What's happening is some of these states now, red states, are trying to reinforce laws so that law-abiding Americans don't get arrested. So let me ask you, before we say you're allowed to run over protesters, okay, look, nobody should just be, like playing road rage or twisted metal. But is it illegal to stand in a freeway? Is it illegal to stand in a street?
Yeah.
Right? Yes. People have gotten tickets for jaywalking. Is it illegal?
Yeah.
It is illegal. The government decided they are not going to enforce this, and what did that lead to? Again, the slippery slope, where then they went from standing in the street to surrounding cars and kicking in windows and creating a road hazard, and like we see an increase in violent crime. And so, what has happened is some of these red states are saying, oh, no, hold on a second. We need to reinstate the rights of Americans who have the right to drive freely on these roads. They have the right to not have their trip be impeded. They have the right to not have their safety be put at risk, which, by the way, it's just as risky in many cases for the drivers as it is for the people. So it's already against the law. Democrats have decided that people who are breaking the law, they're actually in the right. The criminals are no longer the criminals. The criminals are the people who are opening the restaurant. The criminals are the people who aren't double masking. If they had their way, the criminals would be the people, by the way, most of you who believe that you should have a driver's license to vote, but the people who don't present their own vaccine verification passport to go into Madison Square Garden. You're the folks who need to be locked up, not the people who are committing what once upon a time were crimes, like impeding traffic, vandalism, or the good old-fashioned knockout game, right? These laws were suspended in cities across the country. Believe your lying eyes.
About 30.
No, they're just like the Tea Party out there on the Capitol steps.
Cops sitting right here going, nothing I can do.
You see, I thought that was not legal.
Peaceful.
I just feel bad because some guy was trying to go to jail for his anniversary.
We broke into a law office. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Just books.
Though the irony is as rich as that smoke. So, I don't need to tell you it's against the law to graffiti a building. Not really. And by the way, people who say that it's art, shut up. Shut up. It's not your canvas. They're like, oh, it's art. And some of it is beautiful. Like, how about I piss my name on your pillowcase? Okay, it doesn't matter if it's the Mona Lisa. It's not mine.
Yeah.
I don't have the right to break your crap. That's the issue with graffiti. I know many of the people out there who support tagging are non-contributing zeros, but that being said, it's also stupid because you're like the wet bandits. Now the cops know every single place you vandalized.
Right.
Look, there's a lot of hours in the day after this show, and I like to paint.
and the truth is, I don't always have money for a canvas. So, look, I had to have a conversation with my wife last year with our very, very young son. Honey,
stop tagging our house.
Exactly, yes. Honey, stop spray painting the bathroom. No, look, if you're out and you've got our son in the car and there's a mob around your car, as quickly and as safely as you can, get away. We will deal with the consequences later. I'm sorry, I'm not going to put my wife and son at risk because an angry mob is starting to bash in their windows. Oh, don't drive away because somebody might climb on your car and then fall off and get hurt.
By the way, don't drive slowly.
No, as quickly and as safe.
Exactly. Like, as quickly as can, because if you drive slowly, they take it as license to swarm you. Like, oh, he's trying to drive
red. Okay.
Look, just floor it. Yeah, floor it if you're caught there. If you can't avoid the street where these miscreants are congregating,
you can go around. Do it as safely as you can, but as quickly as you can.
But if they swarm your car, you've got to get out of there as quickly as possible.
Floor it about an inch from all the way down, because you don't want to just burn rubber and sit there.
Yeah, exactly.
So what you want to. Yeah.
Although there is a plus to giving them. The wheels screeching in their head go like, oh, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
Oh, this is gonna hurt.
And once upon a time, it was fine for you to protect yourself and get out of this.
Yes.
We shouldn't have to have laws that says, hey, if you climb on top of somebody's car and you're actively beating in the windshield, they can pull away.
You know, we did have laws. They're just not enforced. Something else, but let's look at another example. Not only are they not enforcing laws, they're creating laws that are against their own laws. For example, there are many states that have anti-mask laws. Good example of this is actually, where do these, I mean, we can bring up here, bring up some overlays of states that have anti-mask laws, and a big reason for it is this goes back to the KKK. Yeah. It goes back to gangs, criminals, right? People are more likely to intimidate their fellow citizens, so you are not allowed to mask publicly. They say not only are we not going to enforce that, but we are going to force you to wear a mask. That also contributes to the rising violence. Listen, you all, does anyone here think that someone on Twitter who is anonymous behaves less poorly?
I used to wear a ski mask to first dates.
Yes. Yeah.
Just putting it out there, huh?
Yeah. By the way, it's only a date if she knows about it, Mr. Rogan.
Jeez.
That's true. Well, I used to wear them to my hobby.
Yes, to your hobby. These laws, but again, these laws exist to protect who? Law-abiding citizens.
Yeah.
Law-abiding citizens. That's why we have mask laws. That's why we have graffiti laws. That's why we have laws that you're not allowed to be in the freeway. That's why we have laws like murder. And we once upon a time didn't release them if they broke the murder law.
That's
that was
specifically.
Sometimes we killed them.
Yeah, sometimes we killed them.
We actually put them in an electric chair, and now we're like, you should go. I don't want you to start sneezing. That's astonishing.
Is that a cough?
Yeah.
Is that a cough that I'm hearing? Tukey?
Look, look, you might be on death row, but I don't want you to die or anything.
Yeah, you gotta save your life.
$100,000 a year for some reason.
So now in Washington, yeah, that's right. It's a misdemeanor to not wear a mask. In Colorado, they've been arresting dads who violated stay-at-home orders by playing softball with their daughters. And by the way, here's another example. We'll be talking with Dr. Peter McCullough a little bit. The FDA banned the use of hydroxychloroquine, right?
Yeah.
Keep in mind, it's been prescribed off-label for decades.
Yeah, because some lady murdered her husband with fish tank cleaner, essentially.
Right.
That's
By the way,
hilarious.
was a well-known liberal.
Yeah. Hilarious.
And the media totally covered it for a long time. There's no way. Just like with the punk rocker who said, my dad, this boy came up and said, my dad hates Chinese people. So it's like, no, that never happened.
No.
Never happened that someone was dumb enough to hear Donald Trump and thought, I know, I'll drink fish tank cleaner.
Yeah.
Never happened.
She thought she could get away with it because people dislike Trump so much.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I just thought I should start giving my husband fish tank.
And she did get away with it. The media covered it as legitimate.
Yeah.
Well, for a little bit.
No, they covered it as legitimate. Then when they found out she was a liberal, we were the ones who blew the lid off that thing.
Were you really?
Yeah, we had
Oh, wow.
exclusive on it.
Yeah.
Where it was we found the criminal records of her. She was trying to off her husband. She tried to file for divorce multiple times.
Yeah.
On my old show, we don't have the clout that you had, but on my old show, we just called it. We're like, there's no way she didn't just kill this guy.
No.
And then she did.
Yeah, that's exactly what she did. Now, again, you look at this. Now,
She let out, by the way, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay, but it's important because doctors should have the right. This is patient-doctor privilege to prescribe hydroxychloroquine. They use it for things like lupus, but they also use it for other inflammatory diseases, disorders, viruses. We're going to have a doctor talk about it, how it's not the panacea, but in tandem with other available treatments, works. It's important. So they've now made a criminal out of your doctor trying to make the best decision for you, the patient. Why? To politicize it. So you're a criminal if you try and save your family and you run over a protester. You're a criminal if you go out and you confront people vandalizing your property. You're a criminal if you give your patient, and you believe this is the best medical protocol possible right now, given your scenario, you are a criminal if you prescribe hydroxychloroquine. You would be a criminal in the Democrats' world if you had a magazine capacity of over 10 rounds. If you had a semi-automatic weapon without a bullet button. Basically, anywhere outside of California, they want you to be a criminal, and they release hundreds of murderers. They want Americans to be criminals, and criminals to be a new voter base. Yeah, that's about. You know what? That's about all I have to say on that. I don't know if anyone else has any points. By the way, you can follow me on Instagram, Louder with Carter. I know we're gonna have Dr. Peter McCullough here in a little bit. It's a live show Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. Eastern. That's how you tune in. So if you're watching on Rumble, just tune in live on Mug Club, and we'll take your live chat in a little bit. CrowderShop.com. Father's Day. This is the last week for it to come in on Father's Day.
10 a.m. Eastern. 10 a.m.
What did I say?
I think you said 8.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I can't be held liable for what I say. Just ask YouTube.
Well, hold on. Wait 5 minutes, and then you can change your opinion, and nobody will ever know.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that the COVID did not start in the lab.
Ah.
No.
Oh.
No.
But it was because
it started from bats that were in hibernation 1,000 miles away. Fucking idiots. Sorry, I'm just so the fact that I look, okay, does it pass the sniff test? Oh, came from a bat. First off, 80,000 species, 80,000 samples, I guess, not 80,000 individual species, but 80,000 animals tested. Oh, none of them tested positive. Oh, wait a second, the bat's 1,000 miles away and in hibernation. Yeah, checks out because Fauci said so.
Yeah. Like, it just made sense. It wasn't like, and nobody was like, oh, those stupid Chinese. Nobody said that. They said, oh, wow, this sucks. It got out of a lab, most likely. We got to figure this out. Wait a minute, did China do it on purpose? I don't think they did it on purpose, but it probably just got out of a lab.
By the way, this might be a risk, but you know, when we say all cultures are equal, the fact that both theories are equally plausible, that you knowingly were conducting gain-of-function research, creating superviruses, and released it out into the world, causing the pandemic. Or you guys are so careless that you have wet markets with live animals and feed on bats that you could have actually contracted a virus and sent it out unbeknownst to you, means that maybe not all cultures are equal.
That's true.
No one would question either of those stories. And that's not because the Chinese people are less than It's because they live in squalor due to the government, who the World Health Organization and CDC support. That's why. You don't think the Chinese people would love to have a little bit more access to a fridge? Can we just get the Chinese people a Kenmore?
Somebody, please.
I don't even like the words wet market.
Everything about it.
It's no good.
Everything about it is it's an affront to sensibilities. Okay.
Dry goods, even in here.
Speaking of which, this just went viral. It's from last night, or it's from 2 days ago, the 60 Minutes, and actually they did a pretty good job. It's on detransitioning.
Yeah.
In some cases, patients are choosing to reverse the process. It's called detransitioning. In her early 20s, Grace Ladinsky Smith was seriously depressed and developed gender dysphoria. She began searching for answers in transgender communities on the internet.
And when I saw them being so happy and excited about doing this wonderful transformative process to really become their true selves, it was like, have I considered that this could be my situation
doesn't know
too?
what she's doing.
Did this have any part of it? A sense that men had it easier in life than women did, and that your road might be easier if you were male?
Yes. I just had this sense that if I could inhabit life as a trans man, as a man, then I wouldn't feel so self-conscious. I was thinking that it would make me feel very free.
Yeah, yeah. You chop your tits off, and so that you avoid the stairs. So, and this person, the way he transitioned back, and I will say they did a pretty balanced job. This girl was
what? She went to a trans site to get answers. It's like if you went to a Nazi site and you're like, well, they seem to be really into this one thing.
But these are the doctors who are advocating transitioning for children, right? Who do you think are going to sit in front of a panel? A bunch of trans doctors who go, oh yeah, we need to only provide affirming care. So I wanted to be clear. Tim was a little fast with the trigger button there. This was about the laws. You know, a lot of them are simply preventing trans athletes from competing, and then a lot of them are preventing, disallowing parents from transitioning their children, putting them on puberty blockers or sex hormone replacement therapy until they are 18. And people think that that is an absolute travesty of justice. And they were pretty balanced on 60 Minutes in that they provided some points of view from people who wanted to detransition.
Yeah.
Now, this is not at all uncommon. It's pretty tough to find those actual statistics. I wonder why. But here's a statistic that is undeniable when we're talking about children. 98% of kids who think they're trans grow out of it if you don't give them puberty blockers or hormone replacement therapy.
98.
Yeah.
Well, that's when
once you start it, zero.
Can't.
What?
They physically can't grow out of it if you've given them.
Right. Exactly. Zero grow out. So go from 98 to zero. Now, we don't have the long-term studies on what these hormones do with children. But people were outraged.
They think you should be able to transition a 6-year-old.
If you watch The Elephant Man, I'm sure it gives you some idea.
Yeah, it gives you some idea. Or if you look at, Chris Benoit, or you look at Barry Bonds, whose forehead casts, you can use it as a sundial. The point is, we know what happened to Chris.
We know exactly what happens. We banned it in sports. We make sure that we don't put too much hormones or too much estrogen in people because we think it's really bad for you. And they're like, oh, but a 6-year-old who's confused at lunchtime, let's go for it.
Weren't these the same people who were blaming early puberty menstruation for girls on Monsanto and hormones in milk?
Yeah, and chicken. All the chicken they eat.
Well, look, I was depressed and suicidal, and somebody very close to me and my family committed suicide. And it's a very, very important thing that people discuss it. And right now, doing that for depression is absurd. You're making their lives worse.
Yeah.
I think for some people, when you get older, if that's who you want to identify as, that's fine. But doing this to kids is wrong. I'm just going to flat out say it on the show.
It's child abuse.
And yes, it is. And depression is a very serious thing. And the people that are depressed need to speak to somebody who is a professional and wants to hear you and talk to you about your real problems to get you real treatment. It's not just cut your tits off and you're going to be. It's true. I mean, I'm not.
One of the first
funny. It's messed up to do this to people.
A lot of middle-aged men think they're suffering from depression. You know what fixes it? By the way, testosterone.
Yeah.
That's a lot of guys are suffering from low testosterone. It's what we know. You've seen these commercials. You've seen that guy.
Not all man, Crowder.
You've seen that guy in the back of the airline magazine, right? Oh, like these used to be my pants, and he looks like one of the Kringles now, but Kringles on Anavar. No, the point is, yeah, when there's depression, and there's a difference with hormones, and we know that with young men, we know that with older men, you lower their testosterone, you increase their estrogen. It almost always manifests itself as depression, which is why the attempted suicide rate doesn't get any better. But the science isn't in yet. Okay. Hey, speaking of which, Elliot Page is feeling pretty good, though, about the transition. Just showed off his new abs on Instagram. Hey, look at that. Let it never be said that Christian Children's Fund discriminates by race.
That flies all over.
That's just. And by the way, the post was captioned, "Trans BB's first swim trunks, #transjoy, #trans is beautiful." You know,
I tweeted the remake of Fast Times looks terrible.
By the way, could have saved a lot of money by just buying a pair of red swim trunks.
Would have been close.
Could have led with that.
Yeah.
I don't think it would have had to go through. By the way, important to note, now Smooth Manny says 100%. I suspect it. Ab implants. I'm pretty sure those are fake. Those are ab implants.
They have
because
to.
look, here's what you look at. If you look at like the guy on the right, those are actual abs. You look on the left, when abs at the bottom are larger than the abs at the front, that's usually a sign of abdominal implants. Go back to Elliot Page. Let's bring back up Elliot Page here.
Elliot.
Yeah, I think that those are ab implants. They're not a natural shape because that would have to be someone who had unbelievably, like it might make sense for someone who's a fat guy who had unbelievably big, strong abs, not someone who's 5'1", and I would be willing to bet less than 100 pounds.
Yeah.
Now,
they're fake.
Yeah, and then this.
I don't think it was ever debated.
Honestly, that's the least controversial thing.
Yeah, I think everyone is just like, look, I'll go with boy, but I'm saying real.
That was his name.
I'll go with boy, because, and by the way, I'll go with healthy-looking boy.
Yes.
I will go with.
No.
There looks like there's nothing out of place here. This is the issue, because you're not allowed to talk about it. Do you really think that 10 years down the line, Elliot Page is? I'm not trying to do it. Nope. Elliot Page is going to be happier, and this is something too. Again, it's all superficial. What happened right away is, hey, look, look how much of me. Look at my body.
Yeah.
Yeah. I find my identity in my body. Find my identity in my race. Find my identity in my ab implants. Oh, look, hey, I bought swim trunks. I know all that it is to be man now. It's just like, for some reason, the stereotypes of women when you're talking about transitioning, it's like, hey, don't tell women they need to wear makeup. Hey, we need to get rid of Barbie and have a more realistic body standard. But then every trans male looks like a Barbie. They look like a stereotype of a woman. And people say, you know, I knew that I was identified this way. Okay, let's all be honest here. Elliot Page walks into a guy's locker room. You think Elliot Page would be comfortable if we treated someone who looks like that the way we would treat any of our buddies in a locker room? Probably would leave and need to see a therapist. You know, you're a smaller guy, but someone that tiny, you know, it would be a constant joke.
Well, I'd probably be like, hey, that guy's got a pussy.
Sorry, I'm just razzing. I'm just joking.
I just have to laugh because I sat in that chair when the news broke, and you're doing the same thing as me, and I think it's because the name is so close.
I do too.
That you keep I just do the same. It's a total accident.
It's not accident from
See?
him.
No, you. It's so funny.
I can't do it.
It's so hard.
Really difficult.
And you want to say it's not Orwellian. We're at a point where everyone needs to look. Just imagine, and I'm not talking about going back to the era of the 50s or even the 60s, right? We don't need to play Cretan songs, okay? You can go back when Barack Obama took office.
Yeah.
Okay? When Barack Obama took office, and say...
Juno was in theaters?
Yeah, Juno was in theaters. And say, hey, in only a few years' time, people are going to be afraid of being removed from the town square for saying that a woman, famous woman, who removed her breasts and got ab implants looks a little off.
Yeah.
They're going to be removed for hate speech. Now listen, you're doing this, you're fear-mongering, you try to do it with NAMBLA, and like, no, here you go, DeLorean, here's a picture. Oh, whoa!
Exactly.
It's my wife, but she's white.
Right. All right, actually, we have to go. Do we have a stinger for this, actually?
Yes.
Okay, so we actually have a doctor coming in here. I thought this would be very valuable for everyone out there to see. Excited to have this gentleman on, Dr. Peter McCullough. Oh, what just happened there? Can you get the singer again and give him the music, or do we not have music? Look, guys, you all know Porter Black Arrow. He's going to be back either this... He's going to be back either, what, this week, or he's going to be back next week?
You know, how is he not texting you for a raise right now?
So, do we have the audio? Do we have the audio with it?
No audio.
Oh, wait, hold on a second. Really quickly. George Floyd's family is remembering him.
He's got a halo with the O in his name. I'm sorry.
I'm not
now,
worried.
Is this the family who we hadn't seen for a decade? Which I'm just a little...
29 million or something, wasn't it?
Oh, my gosh.
Wasn't there some insane amount of money?
What was that token on? Hold on a second, your microphone's on.
Mike's not on.
What was that? Hold on a second. Can we get your microphone back on?
Yeah, they said his aunt. No, this is his cousin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, looks like their Skype froze. Okay, so look, let me introduce our next guest. You can follow him on Twitter at McCullough BHVH. I just had to make sure I look down and get that correct. And if you could bring him up here too on my screen so I can see him there, Tim the Toolman. Dr. Peter McCullough, he's a cardiologist with an MD from the University of Texas Southwestern Medical School. I don't usually read introductions.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure I get this correct because we all would be removed for expressing the opinions that this qualified medical professional may express. So I want to make sure that everyone knows this is true and this guy actually knows what he's talking about.
He is a doctor.
He's not a chiropractor.
Okay.
He got his MD from the University of Texas Southwestern Medical School, Masters of Public Health from University of Michigan, and he's not only. And some people have said he's become notorious for him being outspoken against some of the. No, he hasn't been outspoken at all against COVID. He's not at all. I want to be clear. COVID in there. He's talking about other options and treatments and where our priorities need to lie. What I really like about Dr. Peter McCullough is I like that he's actually offering concrete solutions. It's the anti-John Oliver who just complains and then has no answers. So, Dr. McCullough, thank you for being here, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Now, did I get that right? I wanted to make sure that, because I had a teacher who was a doctor of philosophy named Dr. Mankey in high school, and if I didn't call him doctor, he made me write a 2,000-word essay. Did I get your resume about correct?
You did, and thank you. I'm up here in Dallas, Texas, and I think at this time I've published more on the COVID-19 pandemic and certainly have taken care of more patients with COVID-19 than any media doctor you'll see on TV or certainly any agency staffer.
So have you treated more patients or seen more patients than Dr. Fauci?
Well, to my knowledge, none of the agency staffers have actually ever seen a patient with COVID-19. I think that's been one of our problems. And early on, I said, listen, these hospitalizations and deaths are terrible. We can treat everything in medicine. Let's put together a A-plus team of doctors. Let's figure out how to treat the problem and stop these hospitalizations and deaths. And that's what I did. And unfortunately, we didn't have leadership in Washington at any level that could make that type of courageous statement. They immediately started focusing on masks and vaccination. The focus has actually been on well people throughout the entire pandemic without a focus on taking care of sick patients.
No, you're absolutely. By the way, I just want to be fair. That was a leading question. The correct answer is 0. Dr. Fauci has seen 0. I can say that, but I know you're being very diplomatic about it. Look, when this started, okay, I took so much flack, including from the overlords at YouTube. And then I want to get to, you have sort of a 4-pronged approach, or you have sort of 4 steps that we need to address with COVID, which I think is really helpful for people out there. But I said this with my doctor on air. I said, why don't we quarantine sick people? I said, how about we just quarantine those who are vulnerable, the elderly, the immunocompromised, and we look at what treatments we have available now for other people out there to minimize the risk. You would have thought I had lobsters crawling out of my ears. I'm not a medical professional, but I don't know of any other scenario where we quarantine the healthy. So can you explain for people out there who don't know, sort of your 4-pronged approach here with COVID, what the phases are and what has not been addressed? Because the first one obviously is containing the virus, and almost all of our focus has been on lockdowns and masks until the vaccine. But explain for people who don't know.
Yeah, I testified in the U.S. Senate November 19th of last year, and I presented to America and then published this in the scientific literature. There are 4 pillars to pandemic response. First is contagion control, wearing masks and social distancing, etc. The second most important pillar is treat the problem. Treat the problem early
and we can treat COVID-19 at home. Patients can quarantine at home while they're sick, be treated. We can reduce the duration of symptoms and dramatically reduce hospitalization and death by about 85%. Because it's a fatal virus, single drugs don't work. We have to use about 4 to 6 drugs in combination, as we would in the hospital, but just do it earlier at home when they're far more effective. Hospital care certainly does provide some benefit, but the majority of patients, unfortunately, who die, indeed die in the hospital. Contemporary mortality rates for those who need the ICU at 28 days are 38%, unacceptably high, so we need to avoid the hospital at all costs. And then the last pillar is vaccination or herd immunity. But I've always been a proponent of a balanced approach to the pandemic response, and what's frustrated America is on TV all day long, all we've heard about is masks and vaccines and nothing on treatment.
Yeah, you know what, and I want to touch on that because it seems to me, looking at those pillars, the second one is the one that is not only not discussed, but you're almost shunned as a pariah if you discuss possible treatments for at home. And it doesn't matter what it is. Obviously, hydroxychloroquine was very politicized, which we'll talk about. But then you have other sort of antivirals or other sort of steroids. I think remdesivir, however it's pronounced, was one of them. This is something where not only has it not really been approached as a part of the solution, people are afraid to speak about it. So when you say this is a surprise to a lot of people. When you're talking about at-home care, what does that encompass?
That encompasses now, since November, we can actually give patients an antibody infusion, a monoclonal antibody infusion that are FDA, EUA approved, and they're just as equally as approved as the vaccines, but you'll hear nothing about this on the media. And the poor patients are desperate to find these infusions, and our federal agencies have made them difficult to find. I testified in the Texas Senate on March 10th that we need to have a 1-800 hotline so patients can find out about these infusions right away. They're prepaid by the government. We just simply call the local emergency room and arrange for an infusion time. I do it every day in my practice. Sadly, 80% of these infusions sit on the shelves, not used, because the government is not focusing on treatment.
Now, why is that, though? What would be the motivation there? Because that's what a lot of people will ask. Well, if this can actually help that many people, it seems that you're implying something sinister. They would say, if it works, if you're not just recommending, garlic or vitamin C or just, like some other, which YouTube has banned, by the way, I want to make clear, being facetious, that's obviously not what you're recommending. Why would they not focus on treatment or at least include it at all? Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense that our agencies would neglect sick people, but they have from the very beginning. And I think this is one of the obvious examples. These infusions by Regeneron and Lilly are just as high-tech as the vaccines from Pfizer, Moderna, and J&J, and why our officials are not giving updates on how these infusions are going. Heck, President Trump had one of these infusions. America saw this right from the president himself. How come we've never seen updates on local TV stations, major media? It's as if this treatment doesn't exist. So I think there's a mindset among all people in the media to not bring this into focus, and our agency staffers really have to be held accountable for this. But beyond the antibody infusions, there are oral drugs that we use in combination. Early on, we can use combinations of ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine plus doxycycline or zithromycin. Okay. We use inhaled steroids and then oral steroids, just like we would in the asthma. We can now use an effective anti-inflammatory drug called colchicine. And then, very importantly, what kills patients is blood clotting. So it's important to take a full adult-strength aspirin. And then for higher-risk patients, we prescribe either injectable or oral blood thinners. So it takes about 4 to 6 drugs, but it's enormously successful. And finally, after our U.S. Senate hearings, even though it's completely silent in the media, we've arranged the whole country. We have 4 national telemedicine services, 15 regional telemedicine services, about 10 to 15,000 high-risk patients are treated today. And that's what's cleared out the hospitals at the end of December and January, not the vaccine. Right. It's been a big push for early treatment. The hospitals now have a manageable caseload. The rates of new cases, hospitalizations, and deaths are way down. The only thing that does that is early treatment.
Right. Well, here's the thing. It seems to me that most Americans think they have the option of vaccine or complete lockdown. And if they're sick, right away, get to a hospital, and that's it. These are your only options. And at one point in this country, people thought we're going to have a shortage of respirators. I want to go back to hydroxychloroquine because that's something that was obviously very politicized. And the FDA prohibited doctors, in one instance, from using hydroxychloroquine. So some people will say, oh, no, the science shows hydroxychloroquine doesn't work, so this guy's a quack, so dismiss all of it. What is it? But really, people haven't been following up on that. There have been a lot of studies beyond the initial ones. It just hasn't been discussed in the media. You mentioned hydroxychloroquine. What does the science say about it?
Yeah, I mentioned on Laura Ingraham on the evening news on several occasions that the CDC and FDA and NIH are running about 6 to 9 months behind on the data. So now on hydroxychloroquine, I think we have over 200 studies. There's been some giant studies, 30,000 patients from Iran as an example. And hydroxychloroquine is not a miracle drug, but it's quite helpful. Reduces hospitalizations and deaths by about 25 to 50%. We never use it alone. We use it in combination. Ivermectin is actually a more versatile drug. That's available. And studies there show it works both inpatient and outpatient. And there's been dramatic cases where families learn about ivermectin. The hospitals and the doctors refuse to administer it in the hospital. And in fact, they have to go get court orders and force the doctors and administrators to give ivermectin, and then the patients revive and go home. So whatever's going on is not just at the agency staffers and the media, but it's in the minds of many doctors. It's what we call therapeutic nihilism. I think Americans should be worried.
Yeah, I was going to say, why can they not? In other words, if the science shows that it works, I know a lot of them. Here's one thing that I think you probably understand since you're actually seeing patients. You probably have a lot of people who come and throw their hands up, go, look, I want to trust the science, doc. Right? I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. And right now there's a sort of appeal to authority fallacy, which, like we pointed out, is appeal to an authority who may not be an authority, may not be a practicing doctor. But I'm sure you have people come in and say, I don't know the science. You tell me what I need to be doing right here to take care of myself. Why, then, when people would hear this who aren't following the science, they go, well, if it's prohibited, that must mean scientifically it doesn't work.
I think there's a groupthink, and it's driven by a lot of fear. Remember, originally, all the major medical centers were concerned about personal protective equipment. We saw that on the media morning, noon, and night. That wasn't helping sick patients. That was trying to protect the doctors and nurses. Then when the vaccine rolled out, the first thing we heard about was vaccinating the doctors and nurses. But again, nothing for the sick patient. And so what we've learned over time is actually we've lost sight of what's going on in the pandemic. If we actually just treat the sick patient, that's where all the action is. That's how we reduce mortality. In Texas, we've now gotten some days, we get to 0 deaths per day. The only way to do that is to treat patients early. Fortunately, we're doing it. There's no credit given to the heroic doctors who are doing this across the United States.
Right.
And I'm very disappointed. The only medical society that's supporting early treatment, and they're really the hero society, is the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons. The AMA, American College of Physicians, Infectious Disease Society of America, National Institutes of Health, FDA. You know what they say? They say don't offer a milligram of treatment to patients. Let them suffer at home until they cannot breathe anymore, and then come in the hospital, and then even don't treat them. Let them get to the point where they need oxygen and then start treatment. These guidelines will go down in history as being shameful.
And you know what? One other thing, as you're speaking right now, they just said on CNN that we're about to reach 50% vaccination rate. I think they were saying 50% for the first dose, if I'm not mistaken. I can't hear you talking on, but that's all they talk about in the media here. And before we go to behind the for Mug Club only segment, I want to continue with you a little bit. Explain to people why you said that can't be the only metric, and it's not even, I don't want to misinterpret you, it's not even the most important metric. Right now it's just, can we get to that 70% vaccination rate? That's the only focus, that's all they've talked about on CNN. Is that misguided? If so, why?
It's misguided. I testified in the Texas Senate March 10th, and we are already at 80% herd immunity in Texas without the vaccine. And I used standard CDC equations, and public health officials backed me up on that about 2 weeks later. Keep in mind, in the vaccine trials, less than 1% of people who get the vaccine or get placebo ever come in contact with COVID. So 50% of the nation being vaccinated is irrelevant because vaccination will have less than a 1% public health impact.
Well, that is, honestly, this is one of those things that you use a lot of numbers, and I'm a simpleton, so I'm going to trust you on this, but it sounds about right. Hey, really quickly, we're going to go here. This is where we would tell YouTube figuratively that they can take a hike, and then we go and discuss some things where you can get spicy. You can use foul language if you want, because we're not beholden to the big tech overlords. YouTube, time for you to take a hike.